Application rates are probably what most people think of when they hear specimen label. And it's true. The label does provide specific information on how much product to apply on a given area. This is usually listed as pounds of product per acre, or pounds or ounces per 1,000 square feet. It's important to note that some products have multiple rates. This is because some weeds are more difficult to control than others and require higher use rates. Finally, the label lists information about specific plants that may come in contact with the product. It lists those plants that are tolerant to the herbicide. These are plants that have been shown to withstand 2 times and even 4 times the normal use rates. The label also lists those plant species that have been found to be sensitive to the herbicide and should be avoided. And, of course, the label lists target weeds, those weeds that the product controls. Finally, the label may also list other precautions that are important to know before applying the product. As you can see, the label is a very detailed and very important document. It outlines all the important information you need to know before ever handling the herbicide. So always, always remember this rule. Before you apply any herbicide, read the label. Okay, you know the basics of how a herbicide works, and you've read the label. Now you're ready to learn how to properly apply granular herbicides. There are various types of equipment for applying granular herbicides. There are handheld broadcast spreaders, also called belly grinders, handheld shaker cans, and mechanical boom spreaders. No matter what type of equipment you use, the key is not how the product is applied, but whether the product is uniformly applied at the proper rate. That is what we're going to learn today, and we're going to focus on handheld broadcast spreaders since this is the most common application equipment that will be used for freehand. There are 3 factors that influence the rate of application with broadcast spreaders. First, walking pace. Your walking speed influences the amount of ground covered during an application and will impact the amount of granular product applied. The use of a simple electronic metronome with an earphone set at a comfortable walking speed adds uniformity to the application not only for one applicator but establishes a uniform walking standard for all trained applicators. Once a constant pace is developed and repeated, the metronome need only be used to occasionally recalibrate applicators to make sure a constant pace is maintained. The second factor is the rate control gate. The rate control gate is an adjustable opening that monitors the flow of the granular material into the spinning impeller of the spreader. The opening of the rate control gate influences the amount of product being applied to a given area more than any other factor. The third factor is crank speed. Turning the crank handle faster or slower will impact the speed of the impeller, also called the spinner, which affects the throw distance of the granules from the spreader. The throw distance is also referred to as the spread swath. The crank speed and subsequent granule spread swath needs to match the width of the growing beds. A wider bed may require a faster crank speed to ensure granules are thrown all the way across the growing bed. Research has shown that throwing the granules from 2 opposite directions results in the most uniform coverage. As a result, we recommend figuring all calibrations with the applicator walking in 2 directions. To properly calibrate your application, you'll need the following tools: calibration trays, a calculator, a pencil and paper, a portable scale, a metronome, and a measuring tape. Once you have these tools, you're ready to begin. First, measure the exact dimensions of the bed or area you wish to treat. Then, using those measurements, calculate exactly how much product is needed to treat the area. Fill the spreader with the granular herbicide and weigh the spreader with the herbicide in it. Next, Use the label or technical information bulletin to establish the initial spreader settings. Now, in a practice bed or area the same size of the real treatment area you measured, practice walking with the metronome and adjusting it to match a consistent walking pace. Remember that the same walking pace needs to be maintained all day. Apply herbicide with the spreader, walking in opposite directions on both sides of the bed. Be sure to use calibration trays positioned at several locations in the bed during the initial calibration process to make sure the application is uniform on sides and in the middle of the bed. You may need to tilt the trays to catch the granules in the corner indentation. After the application, re-weigh the spreader and the contents to determine how much herbicide was used. And finally, examine the calibration trays. They'll tell you if the amount applied was too high or too low. What you find in the calibration trays will determine your next steps. You may need to open or close the rate control gate or adjust your crank speed to get the rate just right. Make your adjustments and repeat the process until the proper rate is applied. FreeHand 1.75G herbicide from BASF is a breakthrough product. It can provide effective long-term weed control with excellent plant safety, which means it can reduce the need for hand weeding, saving you time and money. But as with any herbicide, FreeHand 1.75G needs to be applied properly for the best results. Take the time to use the right tools and calibrate your equipment properly. The time you take to do the job right before application will save you time and headaches after application. At BASF, we spend billions to make sure you get better products. Take the time to use them right, and you'll get better plants too. For more information about FreeHand 1.75G herbicide, visit www.betterplants.basf.us.